Well, this was quite the spectacle. A match between the two worst sides of the Big Six. And believe me, that's not a title either of them wanted. These two are having the most shambolic seasons in recent memory, with this result putting Spurs in 12th and United in 15th. Seriously, let that sink in for a moment. These two powerhouses of English football, teams that were competing in the Champions League not too long ago, were essentially fighting to stay out of the relegation zone. And it's looking increasingly likely that one of them might actually be relegated. It's absolutely mental to even say that out loud. Will it happen? Nah, I don't think so, though I never thought I'd even be contemplating the possibility. They both have enough quality in their squads to stay up, on paper at least. But my word, they are awful. The kind of awful that makes you question everything you know about football. We're talking about Manchester United, with their massive wage bill and global brand, and Tottenham, with their world-class stadium and infrastructure, playing like two teams that just got promoted from the championship. Coming into this game, I was actually quite excited, but not for the reasons you might think. I was thinking this is going to be an entertaining match because they're both absolutely dreadful, and whoever manages to make fewer catastrophic mistakes will probably stumble their way to victory. And that's exactly what happened. Spurs made slightly fewer howlers and somehow came away with 3 points. It's like watching two drunk people try to play chess. Fascinating in its own way, but not exactly high quality stuff. But let's talk about chances, because, woo, it was chances galore today. Both teams were creating opportunities like they were going out of style. It was such an open game. It reminded me of watching under-nines football, where everyone just chases the ball around. The funny thing was, they were creating chances at will, not because of any tactical brilliance, but because they're both absolutely shocking at keeping the ball and even worse at defending. The midfield might as well have been a ghost town for all the protection it offered either defense. Now, here's the truly hilarious part. When they did create these gilt-edged chances, they couldn't hit a barn door with a banjo. The profligacy from both teams was something else. I found myself screaming at the television, "Can you just put the ball in the net? It's not that hard." But apparently, it was that hard. We had strikers missing sitters that my grandmother would have buried, and she's been using a walking frame for the last decade. I know both teams have injury problems, so I wasn't expecting some revolutionary Guardiola-style football here. I was expecting mediocre, and boy did I get mediocre, with a capital M. But you know what? It was actually a pretty fun match to watch, in the same way that a car crash is hard to look away from. It had everything: missed chances, defensive howlers, misplaced passes that would make a Sunday league player blush, and enough tactical confusion to write a book about what not to do in football management. The managers on both sides were going through every emotion possible on the touchline. 1 minute, they're holding their heads in their hands. The next, they're shouting instructions that clearly weren't being followed. And then they're just standing there with that 1,000-yard stare, probably wondering how it all came to this. The substitutions seemed more like desperate rolls of the dice than strategic changes. And the game plans, if you can call them that, went out the window faster than a speeding bullet. The fans, bless them, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You could see the mix of emotions in the stands, the frustration at how far these once great teams have fallen, combined with the dark humor of it all. The away end was still singing, but there was a gallows humor to it all, the kind you only get when things are so bad they become funny again. This match will probably be remembered for all the wrong reasons, but it's a perfect snapshot of where these two clubs are right now. Big names, big budgets, but playing small-time football. The only consolation for both sets of fans is that surely things can't get any worse. Right? Towards the end of the game, you know what, scratch that. I was waiting to see if Spurs could put the game to bed. Just score one more goal, Spurs. Jesus Christ. How many chances do you need to be able to score one? United were giving the ball away like a charity shop on Christmas Eve. They couldn't put two passes together. One pass, and eventually they lost it, and Spurs were away. You could set your watch by it. United possession, misplaced pass, Spurs counterattack, missed chance, repeat. Every time Spurs got the ball high up with two passes, they were in the United box. It was almost comical how easy they were cutting through, like a hot knife through butter, except the knife somehow kept missing the butter entirely. United were poor with the ball, poor in defending, and yet still Spurs could not score. They kept getting chances, and United were putting bodies in the way to block the chances, throwing themselves around like they were auditioning for a dramatic war film. If you're a United fan, you would say, well, United defended spectacularly. But come on, let's be real here. If those same chances fell to Liverpool, you think the game would end 1-0? Mo Salah would have had a hat trick before halftime with the kind of space Spurs were getting. This wasn't United defending well. This was Spurs doing their best impression of a team that had never seen a goal before. There was this one moment that perfectly summed up the entire game. Kulusevski got this golden chance, the kind of opportunity strikers dream about. The goal was gaping, the keeper was scrambling, and instead of shooting himself, he decided to pass to Son, which completely destroyed the attack. It was like watching someone get handed a winning lottery ticket and deciding to use it as a bookmark. The collective groan from the Tottenham faithful probably registered on the Richter scale. The decision-making in the final third was absolutely baffling. It was like watching a group of people who'd learned football entirely through theoretical lectures but had never actually played the game. You had players taking extra touches when they should shoot, shooting when they should pass, and passing when they should shoot. It was the football equivalent of a comedy of errors, except nobody in the stadium was laughing. Even the simplest chances were being overcomplicated. Players were trying to walk the ball into the net like they were trying to recreate some classic Arsenal goal from the Wenger era, except without any of the technical ability or coordination that made those goals possible. The anxiety in the stadium was palpable. Every missed chance adding another layer of tension, every wayward shot met with increasingly exasperated sighs from the home crowd. And United, bless them, kept inviting pressure with their inability to maintain possession. Their midfield was like a revolving door. The ball would come in, spin around once, and promptly be delivered straight back to Spurs. They were playing like a team that had just met each other in the parking lot before the game. Their passing accuracy stats must have looked like a poor student's test scores. By the end, it felt less like a Premier League match and more like an elaborate performance art piece about the concept of futility. Both teams seemed to be trying their hardest to prove that sometimes, even in professional football, trying your best isn't always good enough. It was the kind of game that makes you question whether either team had actually practiced finishing in training or if they'd spent all week working on how to make the simple look impossible. My final thoughts. Look, this wasn't some hugely important game in terms of title races or European spots like we'd normally expect from a Spurs United clash. It's bizarre to even say that, isn't it? We're talking about staying up, not fighting for Champions League places. Spurs will be happy they won. Sure, 3 points are 3 points, but let's not kid ourselves. They still aren't out of danger yet, and neither are United. The fact we're even discussing relegation worries for these clubs shows just how far they've fallen. Even if United had managed to scrape a win today, they would still be looking over their shoulders. The reality is, for both these teams, this season has become about one thing and one thing only: survival. They just have to stay up this season, weather this storm, and then focus on rebuilding for the next season. It's like watching two heavyweight boxers who've completely lost their mojo, just trying to stay on their feet until the final bell. It was a pretty fun match to watch. I'll give it that. But let's be clear. The entertainment came from the comedy of errors, not from any quality football. It was like watching a blooper reel being filmed in real time. If you came here looking for tactical masterclasses or technical brilliance, you were in the wrong place entirely. I just feel for the fans. I really do. You lot are going through it right now, paying premium prices to watch championship-level football from teams with Premier League wage bills. This has been a crisis across the pitch for both sides, from defense to attack, from tactics to motivation, from ownership to management. It's been a systematic failure at every level, and the loyal supporters are the ones bearing the brunt of it. We've seen problems everywhere today. In possession, out of possession, decision making, finishing, defending, you name it. The only consistent thing has been the inconsistency. For two clubs of this size and stature, it's almost unbelievable. Let's hope for both these clubs' sake that this is as bad as it gets. Though I've got a feeling we might be saying that again next week. This has been Across the Pitch, over and out.